They want you predictable, not because it's efficient, not because it's safe, but because predictability is control wearing a mask, the kind that smiles while binding your hands. A predictable man is a man mapped, known, patterned, and placed. Not dangerous, not sovereign. He is a machine moving along lines someone else drew. They don't fear your rebellion, they fear your unpredictability, because it denies them the comfort of strategy. It fractures their simulations. It makes the game real again. Every system, whether a court, a corporation, a republic, or a regime, is built to domesticate. It gives you paths and tells you they are choices. It gives you order and calls it freedom. But what it wants is compliance dressed in self-expression. If it knows how you will react, it already owns you. Your ambition becomes an algorithm, your anger a forecast, your resistance a manageable variable. And so the first betrayal you must commit is the betrayal of their expectations, not theatrically, strategically, quietly, with precision. You do not announce that you are no longer playing by their rules. You simply stop being a piece on their board. You create doubt. You introduce risk. You force them to ask, "What is he thinking?" And in that moment, power tilts, because the man who cannot be read must be negotiated with, never commanded. Understand this. Fear is not always loud. The fear they instill in you is soft, the kind that teaches you to explain yourself, to shrink your impulses, to apologize for your edge. They want you obedient, not through force, but through habit. They break you with patterns, routines, deadlines, consensus. They offer praise when you align, and silence when you deviate. Until your instincts rust and your hunger dulls. But the man who leads truly leads must be sharper than that. He must live in the space between civility and violence, not because he enjoys cruelty, but because he understands necessity. Predictability is a luxury for the powerless. A leader must be calculated, not consistent. He must be principled, but never prisoner to principle. He must learn how to betray without remorse, not as a habit, but as a lever, because loyalty is a currency, and like all currency, it devalues when printed too freely. The myth of moral leadership is a tool of the weak. They tell you that good men don't lie, don't betray, don't strike first, but no throne has ever been built without deception. No state preserved without blood, no peace maintained without the credible threat of force. They want you predictable so they can call you good, then dispose of you the moment you threaten the hierarchy. The man who survives power and keeps it is the one who knows when to disappear and when to return, when to flatter and when to frighten, when to serve and when to rule. He bends perception like a weapon, wears masks not to deceive the innocent, but to disarm the ambitious. He understands that in the theater of power, appearances are ammunition. If they think you are kind, show cruelty. If they expect rage, deliver silence. Be where they least expect you, not just in place, but in temperament. This is not chaos. This is strategy. Predictability is the death of strategy. The predictable man walks into traps. The unpredictable man builds them. And yet you cannot live without pattern entirely. Even wolves must sleep. But your patterns must be layered, obscured. You must give them enough to study, but not enough to know. You must be a mirror that reflects their fear, not your truth. Let them see what they want, while you become what you must. This is not paranoia. This is survival. The world does not reward the sincere. It rewards the necessary. You do not win because you are honest. You win because you are useful, feared, or invisible. Those who believe otherwise become martyrs to systems they refuse to see clearly, martyrs to their own vanity. They say trust builds nations. No, it is distrust that preserves them. Trust creates alliances, but distrust maintains vigilance. Without vigilance, power rots. And when it rots, it is taken by those who were watching, waiting, adjusting. They want you predictable, because then you are not a player, but a forecast. They want you to flinch on cue, to confess your strategies, to move like a citizen in a simulation, efficient, traceable, forgettable. But you are not a citizen in this game. You are not a product. You are a weapon. You are a strategy in motion. You are the deviation that makes the whole machine shake. And make no mistake, the machine is always watching. It smiles through bureaucracy, calculates through policy, enforces through narrative. It does not need you to agree. It only needs you to obey. It trains you to choose the lesser evil until all evil becomes familiar and all resistance becomes unthinkable. It asks you to comply just a little more for safety, for peace, for unity. And when you give in, it thanks you. Then it tightens the grip. This is not a conspiracy. It is design. Power seeks to preserve itself. The state is not an ideal. It is an organism. It feeds. It adapts. It devours the unpredictable first. Unless that unpredictability becomes its only path to survival, then it courts it. Then it needs it. But only if you've proven you cannot be replaced. To reach that point, you must understand the difference between being feared and being hated. The feared man is respected because he has limits, and others know them. The hated man is reckless because he breaks the frame without offering a new one. Do not confuse chaos with power. Do not destroy if you cannot rebuild. Destruction is easy. Control is art. They want you predictable, but you, if you would, rule must become a contradiction, reliable in ambition, unpredictable in method, respected in peace, feared in conflict, known in form, unknowable in intent. Because in this world, it is not enough to be right. You must be necessary, and necessity is not a trait. It is a perception you must cultivate, guard, and reinforce with every move. Let them believe you are vital. Let them fear what you might do if excluded. Then you are no longer merely a subject of the game. You become its axis. And if you become the axis, if all movement must calculate around your existence, then they will no longer seek to predict you. They will learn to adapt to you. And that is the first breath of power. But to become the axis, you must first renounce comfort. Comfort is the sedative of the rising. It teaches you to cling to positions rather than power, to titles rather than leverage, to applause rather than fear. A man in comfort cannot calculate risk, he avoids it. He builds walls instead of weapons, routines instead of reach. The world he builds around himself becomes a prison of habits, a kingdom without threats, and therefore without edge. The sharpness of command is dulled by familiarity, and so the predictable man begins to mistake his preservation for permanence. But nothing in power is permanent, only the will to adapt. A ruler must learn to abandon what he once needed. The ally who lifted you becomes the rival who resents you. The principle that inspired you becomes the chain that limits you. Even your own past must be cut loose, if it hinders your trajectory. To evolve is not to betray oneself, it is to shed skins that no longer serve the direction of your will. Sentiment is weakness when wielded without strategy. You may carry memory like a blade, but never like a burden. What you were is irrelevant if it does not serve what you must become. And yet, the world will try to drag you back to that past. They will remind you of your words, your promises, your gestures. Not because they care, but because it cages you. A man who is bound to his former self is a man who cannot maneuver. They will call it integrity, but it is a noose disguised as honor. You must learn to disappoint without apology. Let them rage. Let them mourn the version of you they imagined. That man is dead and you buried him for a reason. Power is not built in light. It is constructed in rooms where silence matters more than truth, where the mask is not deception, but protection, where each gesture is weighted, each silence deliberate. In such spaces, emotion is a liability. You must learn to feel without showing, decide without explaining. The hand that moves the state must be steady, but never transparent. Transparency is for the governed, not the governor. They demand to see your heart only so they can strike it. Hide it, always, and let them wonder if you even possess one. You will be accused of coldness. Good. Cold is the element of the strategist. Fire burns too quickly, it consumes itself in passion. But cold hardens. Cold sharpens. It endures. It does not act in impulse, but in calculation. The man who is feared for his coldness is a man who has learned to delay pleasure, to suspend sentiment, to prioritize structure over spectacle. He does not lead by charm. He leads by consequence. To lead is to govern not just people, but perception. The most powerful leaders understood this long before they held office. Reputation is leverage before you ever speak. It enters rooms ahead of you. It decides who listens and who obeys. But reputation is not truth, it is theater. You must shape it like a sculptor, presenting only what reinforces your grip. Be seen where it matters. Be absent where your silence creates tension. Let your myth move faster than your voice. Let them guess your motives. Invent your ruthlessness. In their speculation, you will become larger than any confession could permit. Do not waste your breath explaining yourself. Explanation is submission. It implies guilt, or at the very least insecurity, and power is allergic to both. If they misunderstand you, good. Let them. Ambiguity is armor. The more they must guess, the less they can plan. Let them talk in circles while you walk in lines. Be decisive in action, but impenetrable in motive. The man who explains becomes predictable. The man who acts and vanishes becomes legend. You will be tempted to trust, especially when the air thins and your victories isolate you. But trust is a luxury you cannot afford. At best, it is a calculation. At worst, it is a drug. Those closest to you are not the safest. They are simply the ones with clearest access to your fall. Betrayal never comes from the outside first. It is always seated inside, under the guise of loyalty. Study those who serve you, not for affection, for ambition. Everyone serves something. If it is not you, it is only a matter of time before the knife appears. Yet do not become paranoid. Paranoia weakens the frame. It signals fragility. Instead, become indifferent. Expect betrayal as part of the game. Prepare for it, as one prepares for winter, not with panic, but with strategy. The betrayal you anticipate cannot destroy you, only the one you refuse to see. Do not mistake control for love. And do not mistake loyalty for permanence. The same crowd that cheers your rise will savor your fall if it entertains them. That is why the ruler must never chase adoration. Love is negotiable. It bends, it fluctuates, it attaches itself to moments. But fear properly cultivated endures. Not terror, not chaos, but the quiet, calibrated fear of consequence. It does not require brutality. It requires clarity. If they cross you, they suffer. If they defy you, they lose. Simple. Predictable even. That is the paradox. Your unpredictability in strategy must be matched by absolute predictability in consequence. If they strike, they must know they bleed. This is how order is preserved, not through laws alone, not through ideals, but through the invisible architecture of cost. People are not ruled by philosophy, they are ruled by thresholds. The threshold of risk, the threshold of pain, the threshold of uncertainty. The leader who understands this does not need to scream. His silence is enough, because his silence implies calculation. And in that calculation is danger. You cannot be their friend. You may dine with them, laugh with them, share memories with them, but if you wish to lead them, you must reserve a part of yourself they can never touch. That part must remain untamed, unreachable, the core of command, because one day they will turn, and when they do, you must stand alone without trembling, not out of hatred, but out of clarity. They want you predictable, because a predictable man is a contained man, and a contained man cannot command. He can only comply, he can only repeat. But repetition is the province of the subordinate. The leader must invent, must diverge, must act before consensus, not after. He does not wait to be confirmed. He confirms himself, then imposes that confirmation on the world. And when the world resists, he does not retreat. He recalibrates. He does not beg for understanding. He creates outcomes that force recognition. Power is not granted. It is asserted. It is taken. And once taken, it must be held not with sentiment, not with tradition, but with vigilance. That vigilance begins with self. You must watch yourself more than you watch others. Watch for weakness masquerading as compassion. Watch for fatigue disguised as mercy. Watch for the hunger for applause, the thirst for vindication. These are not signs of virtue. They are symptoms of decay. When a ruler begins to need approval, he ceases to be sovereign. There is a solitude in this path. Not loneliness, solitude. It is the necessary condition of clarity. It allows you to hear what others drown in noise, to see patterns where others see chaos, to anticipate betrayal not with panic, but with precision. This solitude must not be escaped. It must be mastered. It is in that silence, in that unshared space, that your true strategy is born. They want you predictable, but you, if you would rule, must become the question they cannot answer, the variable they cannot chart, the force that does not explain, but acts. Because in the end, all systems fear one thing above all, a man they cannot predict, because he has already conquered the need to be understood. And that man, the one who no longer requires understanding, becomes something far more dangerous than an opponent. He becomes a shadow on the map. A presence that cannot be assimilated, cannot be mirrored, cannot be controlled. His very existence creates imbalance, because he resists absorption. The system cannot buy him, cannot break him, cannot use him as an example. He rewrites the frame by refusing to exist within it. But to become that force, you must first unlearn everything you were taught about leadership. They told you leadership was service, that it was humility, empathy, surrender to collective will. These are chains dressed in poetry. They told you that power is earned. It is not. It is seized, cultivated, guarded. They told you to be transparent, that only the guilty conceal. Yet it is precisely the innocent who are devoured first. Visibility is vulnerability. The more they see, the more they can target. True power hides its core and reveals only what reinforces its dominance. Even language is a weapon turned against you. Watch how they define things, how they redefine ambition as selfishness, discipline as rigidity, decisiveness as cruelty. They create moral frames not to elevate man, but to neuter him. The stronger you become, the more you will be accused of arrogance. Let them accuse. Let them speak. You do not lead for their comfort. You lead to direct outcomes, to alter reality, not to soothe illusions. And those illusions run deep. The illusion that peace is the natural state. The illusion that people want freedom more than safety. The illusion that consensus means strength. But the man who studies the world without comforting fictions knows better. Peace is a pause, not a default. People crave safety even if it comes in chains, and consensus is often the camouflage of cowardice. The strongest states are not the ones with the widest agreement, but the sharpest clarity. Someone must decide. Someone must bear the risk of decision. Someone must walk ahead without applause. That someone cannot hesitate. Hesitation is the fracture through which collapse begins. You must train your instincts to act before permission, to strike before confirmation. Because once the winds shift, once the crowd senses uncertainty, they will turn on you with the same fervor they once praised you. You were never their ideal. You were their convenience. And the moment you cease to reflect their fantasies, they will paint you as tyrant. Let them. Because tyranny is a word the weak use when they are denied the power to direct. They cry tyranny when law returns. They cry tyranny when hierarchy asserts itself. They cry tyranny when order no longer flatters their illusions. But order is not born of softness. It is born of force, properly applied. Mercy without strength is impotence. Compassion without structure is chaos. You must first command the storm before you can offer shelter. And command is not charisma. Command is not noise. It is the weight of presence. It is the consequence of absence. It is the force that moves events even in silence. It is what remains when your name alone redirects the behavior of those who oppose you. You do not need to dominate every room, only to make sure that every room carries your echo. That is the gravity of real rule. You become an unspoken reference point. Even your enemies organize themselves in reaction to you. This is the power that lies beyond popularity. Popularity fluctuates. It is a market driven by taste, by gossip, by mood. But sovereignty is not subject to mood. It shapes mood. The sovereign defines the weather, does not wait for sunshine. He does not beg for favor. He alters incentives. He shifts consequences. He removes alternatives. And in doing so, he makes obedience feel like choice. This is not manipulation. This is design. All rule is design, the shaping of perception, the enforcement of consequence, the creation of frames within which others must move. If you do not design the space, someone else will, and then you will be forced to operate within constraints you did not choose, against forces you did not build, in a war you cannot win. To rule, you must understand war, not just the one of blood, but the war of narratives, of influence, of tempo. The battlefield today is no longer the field. It is the feed. It is the algorithm. It is the whisper campaign. It is the narrative that travels faster than the act. A single false frame, left unchecked, can erode a year of strategy. And so you must not only win, you must shape how your victory is remembered. History is not written by the victors. It is written by those who outlast the scribes. Which means endurance matters more than spectacle. Let others chase moments. You must build structures. Let others win applause. You must win leverage. Power is not brightness, it is mass. The unseen weight behind events. The silent center of gravity that draws things into orbit without ever announcing itself. This is why you must be patient, not passive patient. Know when to wait. Know when to disappear. Know when to observe. Because when you return, it must be decisive. You are not measured by motion. You are measured by impact, the movement of a blade, not the waving of hands. And yes, you will be alone in this, not metaphorically, literally. The deeper you move into power, the fewer will understand you. Not because you are complicated, but because they are unwilling to see clearly. They do not want to understand you. They want you to conform. And when you refuse, they will fear you. That fear is your insulation. Let it grow. Do not chase clarity where none is wanted. Do not lower your flame for their comfort. Your clarity is for you. Your vision must outlast their mood. They want you predictable. That is their game. Predictable is manageable. Predictable is replaceable. Predictable is prey. You, if you would survive, if you would rule, must be anomaly. Must be fracture, must be the hand that does not shake, the voice that does not rise, the force that does not need spectacle to be felt. You must become the shape they cannot hold, the wind they cannot cage, the future they cannot forecast. Because once you become that, the ungraspable, the unyielding, they must recalibrate their very system around you, and that, more than any title or throne, is power. Not dominion by decree, but by necessity. You become the condition of their stability, the silent premise of their choices. Even in opposition, you are central. Even in exile, your shadow governs. Not through presence, but through consequence. But to hold this place, you must walk through fire without flinching. There will be tests. Attacks not just on your rule, but on your name, your mind, your very identity. They will call you tyrant, traitor, monster, madman. Let them. These are the cries of those who see the mirror you carry and recoil at their own reflection. They will project their weakness, their compromises, their failures onto you because you refuse to become what they settled for. Their resistance is not moral, it is existential. Your presence negates their comfort. So do not seek vindication, seek results. The world forgets accusation. It remembers outcomes. It forgets who cried out. It remembers who built, who won, who remained. Power is not about being right. It is about being consequential. The ruler is not judged in the moment. He is judged in the pattern of events he leaves behind. Your enemies will try to erase you. Your job is to make erasure impossible. You do this not by speaking louder, but by embedding yourself in the structures that endure. Institutions, networks, decisions that ripple beyond your lifetime. Do not chase credit. Leave fingerprints. Do not chase loyalty. Engineer dependency. Make yourself the bridge no one can cross without, the gap no one can fill. That is how permanence is built in a world allergic to permanence. And as you rise, do not grow sentimental about victory. Every gain contains its own danger. Every throne invites rot. The higher you climb, the more delicate your balance. Do not confuse arrival with security. Nothing is ever secured, only held, only watched, only defended. The higher you are, the more silent your fall becomes. Until one day, you are gone, and they speak of you only in past tense. So prepare for that too. Prepare for decline, not with fear, but with design. The true master plans his exit long before it comes. He does not grip power until it breaks. He disperses it through loyal structures, through successors, through mechanisms that reflect his will. That way, he governs, even in absence, even in death. His system persists. And in persistence, he wins. Because legacy is not memory, it is structure. You do not live on in statues or speeches. You live on in rules that favor your kind, in institutions shaped by your image, in consequences that still echo your hand. That is the immortality of the ruler, not to be loved, not to be missed, but to be irreversible. They want you predictable, because predictability is erasure by time. It is to pass through the world without altering it. It is to be liked, but forgotten, to lead, but leave no trace. That is not rule, that is performance. You, if you are to become what the world truly fears, must burn your presence into the architecture of the age, not with volume, with force, with direction, with precision. You must become the inevitability they pretend does not exist. You must speak not with words, but with shifts, not with hopes, but with outcomes. You must become so necessary that your removal feels like collapse. And yet, you must also be ready to vanish, because the truest power is not to stay, it is to choose when to leave, to dissolve when your work is done, to retreat not in defeat, but in completion. The sovereign who leaves on his terms controls the myth, and myth, in the end, governs more than flesh. But until that moment, your task is clear. Do not become what they want. Do not play to the tempo they set. Do not dress yourself in virtue they can weaponize. Become your own tempo, your own frame, your own mythology. You must be the question mark at the end of their every sentence. Because the minute they believe they know you, they begin to plan against you. And once they plan, they believe they can win. Let them believe nothing. Show them nothing. Leave only the rhythm of your will. The trail of consequences too sharp to trace. The aftershock of a decision they never saw coming. Let them call it fate. Let them call it madness. Let them call it anything except what it truly is. The work of a man who refused to be predictable. And so, let them watch. Let them speculate. Let them form councils and committees, conduct interviews and investigations, gather in rooms to decode the shape of your silence. Let them reach for narratives, for frameworks, for meaning. Let them speak in circles while you move in lines. Let them write their books, paint their portraits, draft their manifestos. None of it will reach you. None of it will define you, because you were never theirs to capture. You were the deviation in their design, the storm they dismissed as rumor, the stillness before collapse, the mirror they dared not look into for fear of what it would reveal. You led not to be worshipped, not to be remembered, not to be thanked. You led because someone had to bear the clarity. Someone had to do what others only imagined. Someone had to stand where principle fails and necessity begins. They wanted you predictable. You gave them inevitability. And that was enough.